introducing. And I think what you'll find is between the morning and the afternoon sessions, you'll have a ton of information. All of the speakers will be available after lunch and during the evaluation process for any one-on-one questions you might have. So as you're going through this morning, please write all the questions down and let's get them all answered. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jon Peddie. As John and ourselves basically got talking about benchmarks and the industry, I think we found a lot of common ground and a lot of common interest where in the benchmarking of mobile devices, there's an opportunity to really kind of go to a next level. Go into an area where user experience is starting to drive the benchmarking process. And I would like to introduce John as our first speaker.
I have a question. You said the gifts very fast. What are the prices?
We're asking off 3 of the contract MVPs.
3 of
the MVPs. The mobile development.
So everybody get that? What's being raffled off? There's 3 development kits. So if you want to do any, here's your chance to create the next great Angry Bird. So I have to stand for this mic, don't I? So most of you know us, our firm. We basically do market research. One of the things that we also do is we do product testing and benchmarking, which is kind of how I got here. The product testing that we do is not the same kind as what you do, is that we don't offer our information to consumers. We sometimes publish them on our webpage just for general information, but a lot of the testing we do never goes public. But it was that testing that we have been doing on all sorts of devices, PCs, workstations, mobile devices, tablets, etc., that kind of was the catalyst for us getting together at this session. At CES, I went around the floor at CES and contacted everybody that was there that had any kind of a footprint in the mobile space and said, look, we're frustrated at JPR trying to test mobile devices. There's just no good way to do it. Would you guys be interested in helping us develop a test that really tested everything? And everybody that I spoke to, with the exception of one company, said resoundingly yes. I spoke to Broadcom, Imagination Technologies, ARM, Qualcomm, excuse me, just the whole TI, the whole group of them. And like I say, only one company went, like this, but all the rest of them were really, really enthusiastic about it. That was great, but nothing happened. None of them said, hey, why don't we do this, why don't we do that? And so Qualcomm said, well, what are you doing about this, John? I said, well, I'm basically beating my head against the wall and getting nowhere. And I said, well, look, how about we try and get some help from the rest of the universe, you guys? This is not going to be something that one company or one person solves all by themselves. So let's get the wisdom of the masses together. And so that's how this kind of all came about and why I'm standing up here blathering at you. So this is the general agenda. And that's basically just tell them what you're going to tell them and then tell them and so forth. Now, this is one of my favorite charts. And this violates everything about how you're supposed to do slides. But the reason I like this so much, and you can take pictures of it, but you're going to get all these slides and everything else in the USBs that Qualcomm is giving you, so it's up to you whether you want to do this also. But in any case, the reason I like this is because this shows most, I'll say most. At the time I thought I got it all, but now I believe that I probably left off a couple things. This is all the stuff that's in a mobile phone. And this little guy right here, we've got all that stuff. And with all that stuff, how do you test it? How do you possibly test a mobile phone when it's got all that kind of junk in it? Well, the answer is you can't do much. And part of the problem is, what do we use our mobile phones for? And we use them for a variety of things. This is just a very, very short list. Just give yourself a second to think about how do you use your mobile phone. So, well, people have been surveyed about this, and this is Nelson. This is a Nelson survey. This thing goes pure Nelson. And what it means, wave 3 is they did it first in 2010. That's the dark gray bars. And then they did it again in 2011. the blue bars. And you notice there's a pretty good consistency between the results that we got from one survey to the other. But let me, this is very hard to read, I'm sorry, but let me just call your attention to one part, which is here. That's paid for games. This is where people have bought games. And that's, as you can see, 22% down from 26 a year ago. So people used to use the phone for played games more than they are now. Part of the reason for that is what's going on there is that's free-to-play games. And as you can see, that's been pretty consistent, 50-51%. Now, the point of that is that the free-to-play games, as of today, are pretty low-quality games. They're not very demanding. They don't ask for much from the CPU and almost nothing from the GPU. The pay-to-play games are more demanding. And so they are asking for stuff from the GPU and a lot from the CPU as well. But as you can see, it's kind of a low interest level. That mind-boggling chart you just saw was the benchmarks that we found. We found over 64 benchmarks and we just stopped looking. And we did that because we were trying to come up with a way to test all the things that a mobile phone could be used for. But what we found was, in those 64 tests, that over 50% of them, in fact something like 60% or maybe more, test the same thing, polygons per second. Polygons per second is something that a phone is used for 20% of the time. So most of the benchmarks out there are testing for a very small application. That just doesn't make any sense. The second largest test was for the CPU. How fast is your CPU going? Well, here again, if you don't know what the CPU is going to be used for, that's not a very logical test. So the bottom line was that we found a lot of duplication and an insufficient range relative to the utilization of a mobile phone. So it was very disappointing in regard to what we found out there for benchmarks. So with the limitation that we have there, this leaves all of us, and the consumers as well, is trying to figure out, what the hell is this thing? You know, we really can't test a mobile phone, or a tablet either for that matter, adequately and come up with a conclusion about the quality or the performance or the value of that device. So we've got to do something else, that's pretty clear. And so something else is that we've got to come up with a test or a series of tests that will allow us to understand the characteristics of the device for more appropriate utilization. Now, excuse me, the obvious answer is, well, then you just test for everything. You test the memory, you test the CPU, you test the radios, you test all the sensors somehow, you test the graphics, you test the display, the audio, on and on you go, and you test all these things. Well, yeah, okay, that would be a solution, but it's not very practical because by the time you finish the testing, the phone's going to be out of production and you're going to have to start all over again. So you can't do that. So what do we do instead? Test. We think the answer is to establish a suite of tests, and that's maybe a little bit easier said than done. Hopefully, by the time this day's over, we'll be able to figure out if it can be done or not. Excuse me. We think that if you pick a few appropriate tests, and those tests are fair and objective, then maybe we could come up with a mutually agreed upon suite where all of us, you guys talking to the consumers, us talking to the OEMs, all of us could come up and say, look, here's the suite of tests we're going to use, and this is how we're going to evaluate the various devices that we get to evaluate, the ones that we have access to. So we've looked at a few. Oh, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so I said this already, didn't I? So that was Google Glasses, I guess you saw that. I think that the ultimate goal will be to build a test that tests for augmented reality. Now that's going to be difficult, and we're not going to do that today. We're probably not going to do that this year. When you think about it, augmented reality, and I assume you all know how it works and what it does, my feeling is that the test for augmented reality, we're going to have a jig of some type where you put the device in it, but it's going to have to be held stable so they can look at something consistently and then give you a measurement of what it's seeing. So it's going to take some doing to come up with a test that would be that good. But I think it should be and could be a goal. I don't know how it's going to come about right now. It's just an idea that we have. Folks that I've spoken to in the industry about it all agree that this would be a great thing to do. None of them have an idea of how to do it. They've all had ideas about how to do various pieces of it, but not how to do all of it. And so, talking about augmented reality, I just wanted to make a little joke here. So, I used to make a joke about people who take their phone. We have a person in this room that does this, by the way. I won't mention Travis's name. And they hold their phone, you see, down like this. They do this. Yeah, I'm paying attention to you. Oh, yeah. I call that the BlackBerry roll, because that's where I first saw was people doing it with their Blackberries. So now what we're going to have is augmented reality glasses, and you're going to think everybody's staring into space, looking up here at this lens instead of looking at you. So that's what augmented reality is going to bring us if we go with Google glasses. So our goal is to get started. We can't wait for it to go. We've got to get going. The market's growing, the market's moving, new technologies are coming in all the time. Consumers are genuinely confused. I don't know how many consumers you guys speak to, probably far more than I do, but the few that I speak to always say to me, well, how do I know what to buy? What's the right thing? And I don't have an answer for them. You know, I tell them, buy what you can afford, buy the most of what you can afford. If you think you can spend $100, spend $105, you won't be disappointed. But beyond that, I can't tell them because there's no good answer. I mean, I could, interview them and say, well, how are you going to use your phone? And the answer there is, I don't know, send text, email, no, they don't know. So how are they going to be able to evaluate it? So until we get a mobile device, until we get an AR test suite, oops, where the hell did I go? I have just a, someone take a slide out of here? Oh, this is interesting. So someone took one of my slides out. Okay, sorry. There are a few suites that we found, and Scotty is one of them. And I'm sorry that this came out, but we found a few of them that we thought would be useful, and I'm going to suggest that you guys use those. I don't know what to do about this. Well, Tim, can you help me?
You're talking about kind of a system level?
Yeah, we had three tests that JPR, we came up with three tests, and we asked Qualcomm, what do you think of these? And they said, actually we had five, and we presented five, and Qualcomm came back and said, well, we think one of these isn't so good, but these others are pretty good. And I had the damn list, and I'm sorry I don't have it memorized, but hopefully today you'll get exposed to them. So that pretty much is my story. Take note of my email address if you don't already have it. I have to run and catch an airplane, so if I can't answer all your questions right now, don't be shy about it, or if you don't want to ask them publicly, don't be shy about sending me an email. I answer all of my email. And so with that, I'll ask you, do you have any questions?
Hi, Sasha Sigan from PC Mag. I 100% agree with 90% of what you said, especially about trying to create user experience-based benchmarks. But I'm a little perplexed about your pivot to talking about augmented reality, because now you're talking about an application that nobody today uses, that many people, that is very divisive among analysts, that many people think is a BS show-off function that not a lot of people will ever use. So why not try to focus on a scenario that includes more of the common functions that people generally agree agree on rather than this kind of pie in the sky possible future use that is still highly controversial.
Yeah, that's good. Hold that. And I hope everybody heard him. He has a good outside voice. That's a very good point, and it shows very clearly the differentiation between you guys and us, is that the kind of testing that we do is designed to stress machines that aren't built yet. We're trying to help the OEMs hit goals that are not currently in the market. So to Sasha's point, it would be more appropriate to test on machines that are running applications that are available today. And so you're right on the mark there. So if you disagree with me 10%, that's fine. You're correct. With regard to augmented reality, this is I don't know how to say it, maybe a personal opinion. I personally think augmented reality will be the killer app. And the reason for it is because it's going to bring so much to our lives and empower us to do so many things that we just can't do right now, but we'll be able to do much more easily and in commonplace. But again, Sasha's correct. We're not going to see it this year, and we may not even see it next year, but it is